Okay, fellas, good afternoon. My name is Daniel Yacarino. I'm president of the Student Organization for Disability Awareness Club. For those of you who don't know me, and you all know who I am, for the ones who do know me. I'm going to have Phil Roccaroni from Academic Computing Center recording, and today we're going to have a note-taking and study skills seminar. It's going to be helping you with your writing skills, your note-taking skills, your study skills, because I'm sure everyone has a problem one way or another. Raise your hand if you have a problem. Yes? Okay. Well, today's your lucky day, you know? Help is on the way. Today we have our CUNY Cap and our assistant from Services for Students with Disabilities, Charlene Wright. She was a former educator, and she still knows how to teach. She has the skills. We have been waiting and waiting for semesters and semesters to do this. We've been waiting for this to happen. And now it's finally here. So she's able to do her event. Please welcome Charlene Wright.
All of you study differently. Some of you like noise in the background. Some of you like it quiet. You're easily distracted. So you're going to learn some techniques for study skills and also with note-taking. Okay? So this takes us to our presentation. This says, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. What does that mean? Do we know what that means? Yes.
If you don't know what's in store for you, you don't know what's in store for you. Simple as that.
Right. How many of you have seen one of these? Mm-hmm.
Yes, I have.
How many of you use it?
I sort of use it. I use it when I need to see a calendar.
Okay, so you have something that you use.
I just use it to see a calendar, that's it.
Well, this is to help you plan, because you put your dates in here, and we're going to talk more about that later. So if you're not using this, you're already planning to fail. Because it means you're not planning your days. You don't know when your assignments are due, finals. You wait till the last minute. It's like, oh, my gosh. You know, and if you don't study, you can't get that time back. Once you waste that time, it's gone. It's like money spent. Once you spend that money, you can't get it back, right? So once that time is gone, you can't get it back. Okay? And what's in it for me? What's in it for you if you study? Joe?
You actually do better on all of your exams and pass the class when you get to the next class.
Right. So these are some of the benefits of successful study habits. As Joey said, helps you remember information for tests. Your self-image improves because you start to feel good about yourself because you're getting better grades, right? And you start understanding the material because you're studying. So you get better grades. It also helps not only with college, but when you go to get a job. Right? Because believe it or not, whatever you're doing in college, it kind of spills over into your workforce. So if you're procrastinating and you're not doing what you're supposed to do and your boss is looking for you to turn in certain assignments, it's the same thing, right? Because you don't break those bad habits. They're hard to break. Actually, it was a boy sitting there with a stack of books on both sides, and he's like, you know, slumped over. So what would you say is wrong with that if you're going to be studying?
Too much on his plate?
Yes, that could be an indication there's too much on his plate, yes.
Working himself silly to the point where he just can't stand it anymore.
Yes.
And it's too tired.
Right. He's tired. And if he's like this, do you think he's alert and ready to study?
No.
So we need to be alert, right? If we're going to be studying. Will I be able to go on? Okay. So we need to manage our time. That's where this comes in. You create a semester schedule, put your midterms, your finals, whatever assignments to do. If you have an appointment with a professor, you can also put other important dates in there as well so you know what you're doing. So like today, some students went to register for classes for next semester. If you had something else to do, even if it was outside of school, if you look at your planner, you would know, oh, that's not a good time for me to schedule anything because I also have something to do outside of school. So that's why you use these planners. And you should post it somewhere also in your study Like at home, I have a calendar by my computer as well, and it has the same thing in it that my planner has in it, so that I can see what I'm supposed to be doing. So I don't always have to go flip through the book. I can just walk in the room and see it. Okay? And how many of you know that for every class that you're taking, you should be studying at least an hour and a half outside of class for each class?
45, and yeah, it would work.
Right. You do it and it works?
Yeah.
Okay.
In my reading class, I do in the 12 hours.
Okay. So you do more, but you should do at least.
I do
Okay.
7 hours at least.
Okay. But they say you should at least study for 1.5 hours for every class that you're taking outside of class. So if you have that class twice a week, then you should be studying at least 3 times. And, 3 hours outside of class. Yep. And do not procrastinate. Because if you have to rush, you make mistakes, and you'll probably get bad grades. Like I ran into a few students on campus, and they're saying, "Oh, I think I failed my test." And I said, "Well, did you study?" Yeah. Exactly. I mean, if you've studied and you've done all that you can do and you still get a low grade, then maybe, nobody's good at every subject. So maybe that particular subject, that's the one you're weak in. But if you didn't study, what did you expect? You ever heard that saying, you get out what you put in? So if you didn't put anything into it, that's why you're getting bad grades. Because here it says, don't freak out if you get a bad grade on a paper. It's not the end of the world. You know? Exactly.
Yeah, that's true.
And sometimes you'll find you might do not so good on one test, but you've done well on the others. It may be that you're just having a bad day, or that particular part of the subject, you just didn't get it. And your work environment, where you do your work. You should have good lighting. Everything you need should be accessible. It should be around you.
Yes.
And do you think having a television on is a good thing when you're studying?
No, it's distracting.
It depends, because there are actually certain channels that are like just music, that if you put on like relaxing music or classical music, you don't study.
Right, yes.
Unless it's that you have to do like a special project or something, though.
Well, when you're studying, it's really up to you. Some people are easily distracted, so they can't have any noise in the background. Others like music in the background. But I wouldn't recommend having hip-hop with all those words where you're going to be singing along and you can't really concentrate on what you're supposed to be studying. So you try to find something, and then sometimes you have the music without the words, but then you still find yourself singing because you know what words should be there. So that's not a good idea either. And studying on your bed, especially when you're tired, not a good idea. Not a good idea. So I had the ideal work environment, but it's not here. And it had the computer, and it showed you that you should have your pens and your papers and things like that.
Well, I don't write on paper. I'm writing on paper. It's more computer.
Okay. And here we had someone who had all kind of thoughts going through their mind. So you have to keep your mind clear when you're studying. You can't have all these different things on your mind and you're trying to study. You can't be thinking about, I want to go to Brazil this summer, and you're trying to study, or, exactly. Or I'm going to a Jay-Z concert this weekend, and you're trying to study. That won't work. Can't have all these things on your mind, or your favorite foods, things like that.
Question though.
Yes.
What if your family has a little hard time just respecting your sense of trying to get the work done though?
Oh, like noise around the house?
Yes.
They won't be quiet?
Hmm? It's usually quiet. I'm just saying that.
If they don't?
Yeah.
Well, you have other choices. You can go to the library. It's quiet. Study, find some place at school that's quiet where you can study. Or some people, I wouldn't recommend doing it if you got to get them to go to school the next day, but if it's like the weekend and you can sleep late the next day when everybody else is quiet and asleep, if you're wide awake, go study then. But also about studying. Everybody has certain times of the day when they have highs and lows, so you got to figure out what time of the day that is. Some people are morning people, so they do better to study in the morning. Have you ever noticed some people go to take classes in the morning and they really do well, and others are like, falling over? Yeah, because they're not morning people. But some people do better in the evening. Like some people, they take evening classes and they do fine. Others, by the evening, they're ready to go to sleep. So you have to figure out, that's another thing about studying. You have to figure out what's good for you. Music in the background, quiet. Should I be studying in the morning or should I be studying in the evening? So those are all things that you need to think about when you're studying, because we have highs and lows. And the other thing is if the family is up being noisy, that's time to get other things done, that, like laundry or something like that, when everybody's up making noise. And then when they're quiet, if that's the time when you feel that you can study or be comfortable studying, then you can study. Okay? Also, diet affects your moods and your energy level. How many of you have gone to like McDonald's and you've ate all these fries and you had a Big Mac and when you finish you just want to go to sleep? You just slumped over like, oh, I just want to go to sleep. I ate too much kind of thing.
No, I just have one
You know?
Big Mac. No, I don't even have a Big Mac. I just have a regular burger.
Or, so carbohydrates are like a good thing, like baked potatoes, things like that. They give you energy. They give you long-term energy. What do you think gives you short-term energy?
Caffeine and sugar.
Yep, caffeine and sugar. That's not the good one. Because just like it brings you up here, you're going to come crashing down. Who knows an example of some of the caffeine drinks? Joe?
What we're having.
I was thinking soda.
Soda.
What we're having.
Coffee, depending on whether you get it with it with that or not.
And how many of you heard of those Red Bulls?
Oh, no. Not, don't go there, please.
Yeah.
I
actually
saw it in one of the stores. I forgot which brand. It was one of the brands that was like for those small shots of energy.
Right.
They actually had something. I don't know when you're supposed. They say you're supposed to use it, but it's supposed to be like. I'm not sure whether it's supposed to be an anti-energy drink to just calm you down because it said focus as well.
Right.
So it was like a non-caffeine focus thing to calm. I wouldn't even trust any of those stuff.
Right.
Excuse me.
Yes.
I know that every time you have to eat, like, drink 8 glasses of water every day. But what about like vitamin water? Because sometimes you have like a medical condition sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Like you having like an over case of acne pill. You have to find a good drink though, like water though, or some juice though to like slim down a bit.
Right. Right. That's helpful.
Mm-hmm.
That's helpful. Okay, we've been talking about study skills all this time. What do we use to study?
No, I think I know what episode that's a link to.
What do we use to study?
I just said it.
She just said it. Say it again.
Notes.
We use our notes.
I just wrote them.
So now this takes us to the portion of the note-taking session. So now get out your pen and your paper. And I want you to know, by the way, I was going to have y'all do like, first we're going to do pre-note taking, which you're going to take it, and then I'm going to show you some strategies, and then you're going to take notes again on the same thing, and then we're going to see how well you did. What changed? I was going to have you do it on history, but thanks to good old Carlos, he said it should be something that's interesting. So we're going to do it on one of the episodes from The Cosby Show. Okay. So what did some of you think the important points were? Joe?
That if you don't try, you won't. If you don't try and do the work that you're given, what's the point in trying to get a job when you know in order to do well, you have to at least try and do the work that's given?
Right. You had something, Jen?
So in order to be successful in life, or to live life, so to speak, you have to be well educated.
Right. Okay, you have,
Can't speak ahead.
think ahead. Yeah.
Because the world here is going to be really competitive.
Especially in this economic climate.
Right, and that goes back to what I said earlier. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And that showed you just what happened, right?
I hate to make a irrelevant point, but you need a lot of money because all he had was $200 left, and still you need to take that away to get a girlfriend.
Well, also, Theo didn't get the concept of what it takes to live any
A regular
person, right? And he's willing to just be an ordinary person, just getting by. He didn't feel that he needed
To
anymore.
get that money, he needs to be well educated and well prepared.
Right.
What was the first thing you say? If you plan, what?
If you fail to
If
plan,
you
tend to fail.
fail to plan, you plan to fail. Okay? So, you should keep all your notes for each class in one place. Date and number the pages. You should also put the professor's name on there
Oh, yeah.
and a title. And if there's a subtitle, you should put that as well. Because later on when you go back to study, if you have a midterm and you've studied like 4 or 5 weeks or a month ago, you're not going to remember what these notes are. You're going, well, what did this go with? Or did it go with that? Or, I have the date, but he might have changed what he was talking about, the context of what he's talking about, and you won't know how that fits in with what you're supposed to be studying. Okay? And you also might want to leave blanks, because sometimes you ever notice that you write something, and then later on he goes back to it, and it's something you could add in, but you got it somewhere else. So you can also, that's another thing you might want to do. Just leave a few spaces in between what you're writing. So in case he says, oh, here's another point, and you can add it in. Okay? And you want to pay attention to cues such as repetition, which is what you kept hearing Bill Cosby saying. And Theo kept saying, ordinary people, I'll just be ordinary people. When you hear a professor keep repetitiously saying something over and over again, that means something.
Yeah,
Okay?
and emphasis.
And you want to put main points. When you take your notes, if it's something you know that's really important about that person or that date, you might want to put an asterisk mark. You might want to put a line under it, so you know that's really important. Also, if you're not sure of something, you could put a question mark in a circle. Like maybe you missed a point, the professor's talking, you miss a few words. You put a question mark so you know later, I didn't get everything I need. Maybe you can go to the professor at the end of the class and find out what was said and let him know what you missed and get it, or from a classmate. Yes, Joe?
What about paying attention to what the professor says instead of just sitting there expecting to know it or just writing instead of listening? How will you be able to do well if you're just sitting there writing?
Right. So you don't have to write everything you hear. You want to write the most important points.
Like pull out decent information.
Exactly.
What the professor's telling you.
Exactly. In the handouts I gave you, which I'll give you one, there are abbreviated text for you to write. Like because, instead of writing the whole word because, you could write B/C for because, or a B and a 4 for before. That's before. So there's quite a few things in there that you can do for shorthand. The only thing I don't recommend is if a professor, like you're taking statistics or math and they give you formulas, don't abbreviate those. You always want to write those out just the way they said it. You don't want to abbreviate those. So formulas, you have to write it just the way they said it. And the 5 R's of note-taking is to review your notes. After you take your notes, you should go home. If you're studying, you're reviewing your notes.
Right.
And you're writing down the facts. Like I said, you don't write down everything. You want to write down what's most important. So like if your professor puts something on the board, do you think that's important?
Yes.
Yes. And if your professor says, this is coming from the text, what do you think you should be writing?
It comes from the text.
What page? Write the page number.
Right.
If it's coming from the text and he's talking about it, you need to be writing the page down in your notes.
Well, you gotta ask for the page number, and then when she says it, you'll write it down.
Exactly. Exactly.
What if he doesn't know the page number?
He should know the page number. He should know where he's getting his information from. And if he doesn't, then in the class, if he doesn't want you to just, interrupt him, you go over and you ask him. Say, I understand that came from the text. Can you, kind of help me find out where it came from so that I can put it in my notes so that I can study later? And any professor who's a good professor shouldn't have a problem with that. Yes, Joe?
What about review sheets?
We mean review
Let's
sheets.
say your professor gives you a packet with all this information to know. How will you, shouldn't you review those and see if it matches with what's in your book after,
You can.
after a day of...
Well, different things work for different people. Some people might be fine just reviewing what he gave them. Some people might be better off looking at their notes, because when you write your notes, you should be writing your notes so that you understand what's being said. Like you summarize. Like right here it says reduce, you summarize it in plain terms so that you can go back and understand. But like I said, if it's a formula, you don't want to do that. You want to put it down just the way he said it. That's where the recite comes in. You're writing it in your own words. And then the way you reflect later is to think about, what am I learning? Right. And even when you're studying, sometimes you might just want to sit there and write down what all of that means, how you put it all together, whatever it is that he's teaching. And the best way is to put it in your own words. And if he's using big words that you don't understand and you write it down, you go back later, you get a thesaurus and find out what does that word mean, or you ask him, excuse me. You know, you have to raise your hand sometimes and ask the question. Because sometimes they don't realize they got their PhDs and stuff, so they're using these big words and they expect you to know, but you don't know.
Excuse me.
Yes.
When they use the big words, sometimes they put next to it the brackets, so AKA something else.
Right. Well, if they have that, then that's fine. And then here's some memorization tips. You make flashcards. And you keep quizzing yourself.
With a 2?
And the 2-for concept, you're getting 2 for 1. So if you make flashcards and you take the bus, you could be studying those flashcards while you're on the bus. Yes. If you're at the laundromat, you've got your cards and you're studying. So you keep quizzing yourself. And guess what? If you keep doing that when it's time for a test, what do you think happens? Do you have to study as hard?
No.
No, because you're constantly getting it. You're constantly getting it.
Make a study chart, make it back.
And you can make a study chart, or you can use acronyms.
If they are relevant.
This is an example of what a flashcard might look like. You might not put all this information on one card. Each card might have something, but you let them know, you know you're talking about Franklin D. Roosevelt, and it's from social studies. And you might want to remember that he was elected in 1932 in November. So that might be on one card. You might have that something about the Great Depression, and that's on another card.
Right.
Dates, years.
Right. So anything that's very important from that professor, that's what you want to be putting. You get it from your notes and make up your flashcards, okay? I had a mind map here. It didn't come out. What the mind map showed you was, it talked about water, and then it showed you all the different places water comes from. Where are the different places we get water?
Reservoirs.
Reservoir, tap,
Streams.
streams. Like even in your house.
Lakes, faucets.
Yeah, from the sink. So it was showing you all these different places that you get water from. That's a mind map. So it's basically water, and then showing all the different places, the tap, the shower, the rivers, the streams, and things like that. Right. So you can do something like that too, because it's easy to look at. Everybody learns differently. Some of you learn by just seeing. So if you make a mind map like that and you look at it, automatically you'll just remember.
Yeah. I hate to tell you where else where it comes from.
And then I had one here, was the animal kingdom. I wanted you to do an acronym for the animal kingdom. But the next one will show you like order of operations. That's an acronym. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally.
Oh, yeah.
That's math, which you know to work, the parentheses, the exponents, multiply, divide, add, and then subtract. That's an acronym. So anything a professor gives you, could be biology or anything. If they want you to remember certain stages, you can find a way to make an acronym out of it. It could be somebody's name, you take the first letters. And if it doesn't matter what order it comes in, then you can mix it up and make your own word as long as you remember them all.
Like,
Yes.
What about the 8 stages of man?
Okay?
How would you?
You tell me how you would make it into an acronym.
Well,
And the end.
I'm not really.
V, T, 8E, stages, S, O, M. So you could do T-sum, the 8 stages of man. Just mix up the letters if it doesn't matter. So T-sum. So you remember the 8 stages of man, right? Yeah. It's not that hard. So now we're going to watch The Cosby Show again, now that I've given you some techniques, and see how you take notes this time, what you do differently. Who feels their notes were different from the first time they took notes?
You betcha.
What was different about your notes?
I tried to place some. I tried to put information in that I didn't put in earlier.
Okay.
And also try to fit it in with the, in terms of the context of what I wrote before.
Okay. What did you put in?
Me?
Yes.
More abbreviations?
More abbreviations? Okay. Okay, so you didn't write out the whole sentence like you did last time? Okay. What did you?
It's open to it, just that it seemed like it's less, folks seem less something that's less focused topic on than, the real notes you take on class, the subject.
Right.
Something like we're watching on TV and taking notes, nothing historical, so it's a bit different.
But there's still points there that you can take notes on.
Still points
Right.
which I could take on, just, not.
Who can tell me what subject you would place that under? What subject?
Life skills.
Life skills? Anybody else?
Business.
Business,
Education.
education, economics, right? Now I have to ask the question, how many of you put a date on your notes?
I always do a heading at least for all my notes.
Okay, did you give it a title?
No, sometimes, for this.
Did anybody give it a title?
No.
Not this time.
You gave it a title?
I have a title that last time though this play.
Okay, so the first time you put a title down, this time you didn't put a title down. Okay, but the rest of you never put a title down. You didn't put a date.
I didn't put the date, but I did put the
I
title.
put a date on.
Well, you had a date. The rest of you didn't have a date.
Out of title.
I don't have a date. You know why? I don't have enough money.
Okay. So these are things you want to think about when you're taking notes in class. The things that we spoke about before. And I just gave you all those skills. And it went right over your head. So a month from now, if I say to you, when did we do the basic skills workshop?
9/4.
Who will remember?
I'm sorry.
But how will you remember? There's no date on your paper, so how will you know?
4,
November 4th.
11/4/09.
2009.
Okay, I'm gonna ask the next question. Who gave the workshop?
Charlene.
Okay. Who gave the workshop? Charlene? Oh, okay,
Mrs. Shawn.
okay. And what have I been telling you about planning?
You plan
You
to
plan
fail.
to
I mean, sorry, if you fail to plan, you
fail.
plan.
If you fail to plan.
Right. And what should everybody be getting? Every semester?
A
A
planner.
planner and writing down everything that goes on,
That's according to your life.
that's according to your work life, your school life, and just life in general.
And why do you need to do that?
So you don't have chaos, so you know what you're
Exactly, exactly.
If you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
There you go. You're gonna remember that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Things are different.
All right.
Oh, no, it's like an acronym. No, it's not an acronym. It's when they switch around.
Okay, but here's one thing.
Yes, David.
Most of us naturally forget right before a test.
Forget what?
Naturally forget everything. Forget everything that we learned right as the test is given to us. Because I have that condition. Even though I studied very hard and learned everything.
You get anxiety?
Same
Yes.
issue.
So you have
I
test
get
anxiety?
nervous. I
Yes,
get nervous
I have
every time when I
anxiety,
take a
severe
test.
case.
I think I have a small city.
Okay.
How would you make it so you don't get nervous whenever you take a test?
But why do you get nervous?
Possible.
Because I start off knowing the stuff that I studied, but then when I go to take a test, I easily forget. I don't have an answer why I get nervous.
So why don't you try some of the techniques that I gave you today
Okay.
and see if that works for you? Okay? You can do the mind map, you can try the index
I
cards.
usually use index cards. On the previous test for a psychology
Mm-hmm.
exam, I had studied both my notes. I put the important stuff on flashcards, and then I studied by doing Jeopardy.
Okay. Did that work for you?
I understood the material.
Okay, so then maybe that's what works for
The
you.
wording of the questions on the exam is what made it hard. to
Okay,
remember.
okay. So maybe what you want to do after you take that first test, because sometimes you're not used to how a professor asks the questions, because I found that, and you may not do as well the first time. But after you see how he words his questions, you might want to think of different ways that he might word that question so that you can answer it.
So basically go over the exam that you got.
That helps too. You go back over it.
But what happens if he only gives you the, let's say it was multiple choice, and
Okay.
you had to put it on
Can
the
you hold that thought for 1 second?
Sure.
So we can talk? Okay. I want to thank all of you for coming. Y'all were wonderful, but I think it's time for us to eat pizza because it's getting cold. And if you want to talk to me one-on-one, we can do that. Okay?